I'm grateful to spend a few minutes with you. It's always a tender time for my wife and I to visit with you wonderful families. We're inspired by your courage and how you fight so valiantly for the community and for your families. As you can see, my address is taking care of our children, community, and ourselves. And it wasn't many years ago that my family, my wife and I decided to take our family to Southern California to go to the beach. And we loved the ocean. We wanted our kids to experience the powerful ocean waves. And we'd taken our kids to the ocean before, but this was the first time Mitch really experienced it as a big kid. And so it was as though he saw the ocean anew. Mitch stood on the edge of the surf, watching the waves roll toward his feet. He was fascinated that they kept coming. When he was a little boy, he learned how to make waves in the bathtub by sloshing his little bum along the floor and then creating these waves, and then all of a sudden, sometimes he'd make big waves that would splash out onto the bathroom floor. Mitch stood on the edge of the surf and asked me, "Dad, where do these waves come from? They don't ever seem to end." I smiled and said, "They come from the gravity of the moon, from the wind, and things that happen deep beneath the ocean surface." Mitch paused a moment and said, "Oh." It wasn't long that he paused and he said, "Dad." "Yes, son?" "What happens if a big wave comes to get me? I can't run fast and I will fall." I said, "Don't worry, little Mitch. I'll grab you and run as fast as I can." Little Mitch stood a bit nervous on the side of the shore, but looked on with curiosity. Sometimes he'd see bigger waves come rushing toward him, and he would run as fast as his little feet would take him. With a little love and encouragement, Mitch began to face his fears of the coming tide. There were moments that were scary, but I held him in my hand, and he started to overcome these fears, and he learned how to respond to them. The more familiar he became with how the waves worked and what he could do about it, the less frightened he became. And soon these expressions of fear turned into laughter. And where Mitch once stood on the edge of the surf, afraid, he found himself wading in it, unafraid. I learned an important lesson that day, and that lesson is that, like most things in life and in nature, we cannot change the ocean's currents or tides, but we can learn how to respond to them and respond in ways that are helpful and not hurtful. In life, we're all learning to face our oncoming waves, and these waves come in a variety of formats. Financial pressures, evolving medical conditions, emotional tolls, relationships, grief, material needs, and a number of other things that seem to come at us endlessly. Learning to face the inevitable waves of life takes time and mindfulness and practice. So I was asked to speak to you, or to all of us, and share some ideas from our perspective of how we can be mindful about caring for our children, care for our community, and ourselves. Except this time I'm going to change the order a little bit. I'm going to start talking about self-care first, then our community, and then most importantly, our children. Care for ourselves. I remember the moment of diagnosis, that sinking feeling of anticipatory grief, and then loss of some type, and then more grief, and then financial concerns and healthcare concerns and a number of other things. If left unchecked, I would have drowned in a sea of worry and fear. And this is when my wife and I learned an important lesson about self-care. In matters of wellness, we can and we must take care of ourselves. On the flight over here to Chicago, I couldn't help but notice, as I was kind of reviewing this presentation and thinking what I might share, I noticed the safety pamphlet. And we're probably all familiar with the phrase when the flight attendants get up and they talk about the unlikely event of loss of cabin pressure. What happens? These oxygen masks pop down. And what are we to do first? We must first secure our own oxygen before we attend to the needs of others. And why is that? Well, we can't really help other people when we're fainting ourselves. And so I think there's an interesting principle there. So in the takeaway is that self-care is vital if we're to effectively help others. And there's a difference, I believe, between self-care and self-focus. Self-care, for example, is inclusive, while self-focus can be isolating. Self-care renews the inner self, while the other might starve others and ourself. Self-care creates life balance. Self-focus puts us off balance. Self-care strengthens relationships, while the other destroys them. One sees and the other is blind. I want to share with you a quick video of a friend of mine in my community in Salt Lake City, Utah. Her name's Carol Lee Bennett, and she is a remarkable warrior that I have tremendous respect for. She's a single mom and cares for 2 children, one of which is Austin, as you see here, and he has DMD. Let me share with you how she deals with self-care. I think there's a powerful lesson we can all learn from.
I've learned that this summer I've been needing to exercise and have lacked the motivation. And Austin, as I've tried to go for walks, if I go for a walk, then his wheelchair goes faster than me. And if I ride my bike, then it's too fast for his wheelchair. And I don't like to leave him home alone for very long. So I got this great idea that I would go and I would mow my neighbor's lawns in the neighborhood. I've been so surprised at how many blessings and how fun it's been to get exercise, but to be serving somebody else in the process and not focusing on me and how fast I'm walking and, and what I'm doing, but to step outside of myself and to focus on somebody else. And so I started just taking my lawnmower and I just walk up and down my street and see whose lawn needs to be mowed, and then I mow it. And as I mowed lawns, I learned the stories of some of my neighbors. I found out that some of them had surgery. You know, one of the families, both of the parents of his parents had passed away within 2 weeks of each other. They didn't have time to mow their lawn, but when they would come home and their lawn was mowed, they knew that they had love and support, even though there was nothing that I could do to change the situation that they were in. I could let them know that they weren't alone. When people ask what their purpose in life is, I think all of our purpose here is to remind each other that you're loved and that you're cared about and that you're important. And however you do that, it doesn't matter, because the message that you send to that person when you look outside of yourself and you give what you have, the message is love. And that's what we all need. It doesn't matter what you do. So many times we think that we have to do something right away, or that we have to do the standard thing that everybody else does. We all have gifts, we all have talents, and we all have love. I know that when I am feeling down, it's because I'm not giving enough. And that when I want to be happy, I give more. So I would say to anybody, if you're feeling down, if you're hurting, if you're having a hard day, stop by the store, buy some flowers. Ask yourself, who might need these today?
So she discovered a powerful principle that in an effort to help herself, she found ways to serve other people. And it was sort of a double win for her, because she was able to work on her fitness goal while serving other people and loving them. And it certainly does a lot to the heart and soul. And that's one thing we learned along our son's, Mitchell's, journey through life, was that when we work through our struggles, if we can help other people, it's a great way to also take care of ourselves. So how do we care for ourselves? And again, in this conference, you're going to hear a lot about medical care and physical care. And that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm just talking about the emotional needs of our families and the wellness that we have in our minds and hearts, both for our families, our community, and ourselves. So as we look at how do we care for ourselves, I think back on a man who I much admire had once said, "A bow that is always strung will lose its pull." And he advocated that it's often necessary for us to set the things down that keep us tight and wound up to relax and unwind. And then when we have to take that back on upon us, even if it's just for an hour, We come back renewed with new strength and ability to do things that if we didn't take the time for ourselves would otherwise take away. So here are just a few ideas of self-care. You know, you spend personal time, whether it's just an hour for yourself or 15 minutes or a movie or a date night with your friends or your husband or wife or your significant other. Take that personal time, whether it's with yourself or someone special. Exercise, hobbies, pursue those. Meditation, service, cultivating friendships, spiritual endeavors, and a whole bunch of other things. So really it just gets down to what is it that's at your core, and how do you then tap into those and feed those things that feed you? And it's so important to do that. Like we learn in the airplanes, we must first put on our oxygen mask for us to adequately serve others. Now let's talk just for a brief moment about care for our community. You know, I often observe people who shake their fist at the sky or the universe. They say things like, I blank hate DMD. And I understand those feelings of frustration and discouragement and even anger toward the disease that we have to face. But if Plato was right and we become what we contemplate, what does thinking and fixating on anger do for us? I know a select few who are so wrapped up in anger that they're constantly in a drunken rage. Their life is characterized by broken glass and destroyed relationships. Often, anger comes at the cost to self and others. And most of the time, it's unproductive. And even worse, it can be counterproductive. In my son's journey with DMD, I learned some important lessons. One of them is that we may not be able to control life's challenges, but we can, like the waves, control how we respond to them. Most importantly, how we respond to them changes us from the inside out. When I think of the battle on DMD, I can't help but think of lessons learned by military historians who talk about warfare. Military historians tell us that an army can seldom fight a war successfully if they have to fight that battle on two fronts. And that is to say, if we're to fight a battle on the outside, the inner turmoil, any army that was to go into war, if they're fighting within themselves, can't be effective. The battle before us is so big and so important, we ought not fight among ourselves. That doesn't mean we can't try novel things and do our own, regimens. I remember when our little boy was young and we decided to take a particular pathway that we felt was in the best interest of my son. There would have been others in the community that disagreed and had negative things to say that we were doing it wrong, and that's just silly. We as parents are entitled for those feelings and impressions about what's best for our child. And I think it would be great to see the community, and I see it often. I think it's rare instances, from my view anyway, that they're terribly negative. Most of it is just supporting each other and saying, great, good luck, and let me know how it goes. If you're doing something different than me, tell me what you're learning. Now, we might encounter people in the community that might be difficult or even hostile. And if you're tempted to fight or go to war with them, just remember that every person is an iceberg. And there's things we see, and then there's factors we don't see that affect and drive their behavior. So I guess what I'm suggesting here is to be patient with others, that if they are frustrated or angry, maybe we can find ways to help them focus on the silver linings, as Pat mentioned. I love what Anthony D'Angelo said. Without a sense of caring, there can be no sense of community. And I hope that we remember that in our own journeys, that as we look at each other's pathways and treatments that we're taking for our own families, that we do that with support and care. Now to my favorite topic, caring for our children. And this is deliberately a little longer than the other two points. What are we doing if we're not taking care of our children's emotional, spiritual, and mental well-being and having them live a life of significance? So this is what I'm going to share a couple of ideas that can, as we look at caring for our children, not just from a medicinal perspective and a therapy perspective, but what can we do for our children across the board? I love this photo of my daughter and Mitchell. This was taken a year after that first series of photos I shared with you. It's symbolic in a lot of ways about facing his fear. He had his sister to hold and help him. And to me, this image just carries a great deal of symbolism. I want to also recognize my sweet wife, who is sitting right there, and she doesn't like that I'm pointing at her, but I love her with all of my heart. And she's taught me more about parenting than any book I've ever read. And, one time I was making a mistake not too long ago as a father. And you know what she said to me? Go read a book. She's trying to tell me to, get educated on how to deal with certain things. So she was great. She said it in a loving way. But the point is, she has shown me by word and deed how to be a good parent and how to improve my parenting. She continues to be my best friend and my exemplar and my soulmate. Before I go really any further, I do want to share with you that it's just as important that we work on our relationship with our spouse as we do with ourselves. So self-care is important. We could have a whole afternoon on how to care for our relationships with our significant other, because in many regards, we as husband and wife or cohabitants, that if we are caring for our child, we have to be united and find ways to forge through as parents to raise our children the best we can. So I'm going to share 6 ideas about caring for our children. And I actually want to change the title to 6 practical ways to make moments matter. And I hope that not all of these may apply to you, but you might pull 1 or 2 things and try them with your family. And you'll find what it does for your children and your family overall will be a blessing. Idea number 1, make the time. The greatest gift, it has been said, you can give someone is your time. Why? Because when you give your time, you're giving something, a portion of your life that you can never get back. Another statement says, if you want your children to turn out well, spend twice as much time with them and half as much money. I know that's true. Here's one idea about spending time, family night. This is something we do every week with our family. And we dedicate one night a week, and sometimes it has to change, but we try to always make it on the same day so we can all schedule and plan around it. But that's a night that we spend time together as a family. We typically don't do it on the weekends just because some of our kids are older and dating and things. So, and here's just a few ideas that you can use for family night. 1, go to the park. Take your kids to the park and play adaptive sports or anything. Parks are fun. Play board games. Teach life lessons. I'll spend a moment on that in just a second. Build something as a family. With little Mitch, I used to go to hobby shops and I would get these foam core thick boards, and then I would buy these little landscapes and we'd hot glue them to the floor, and then we'd get those little Christmas lights you could put batteries in, and we'd make this little snow village. And it was so much fun. I still have them. I don't think I'll ever get rid of them. And it was so much fun to see our little kids building and creating with their hands. And sharing hobbies with each other is another great way to spend time as a family. I'll share some examples of that in a minute. Regarding teaching life lessons, it's always best to start out, if this is new, to lead by example and show your kids how it's done. Maybe do it 1 or 2 times. But then you want to encourage your kids to get involved and share things that they found are interesting or they want to talk about. You can rotate the teaching assignments among family members so everyone gets a turn. The topics can include anything from personal values to interesting facts, spiritual topics, history, how things work, really anything of interest. And what you'll find is a dialogue within your family that's exciting. And we all learn together. And remember, as you're using these teaching moments, that dialogue is always better than monologue. So involve the family discussion. When Mitch left the hospital to go home on hospice when he had heart failure, I remember they were just putting in his PICC line, where they would then pump milrinone right into his heart. As we strolled him out to the curb, I could see a look on Mitchell's face of intentness. He wanted to get back to living his life the best way he knew how. As we buckled him in his seat, he turned to us and he said, "Mom and Dad, isn't it my turn to teach family night?" Here's a boy that was facing a terrible situation, and he was so excited to share his lesson that he had already prepared on family night. The next night, he shared the most beautiful lesson on love. And I filmed it. And I was so grateful to hear and be taught by my son about his perspectives on what it means to love and show love. So I've talked about life lessons. I won't go into too much detail through the other parts. But we spent a great deal of time and continue to do so as a family. In fact, I think every one of these photos are within the last 2 or 3 years. So whether you're going to a park, playing a board game, you see a picture of Wyatt down here on the bottom right where he's showing me his favorite Pokemon cards. I don't understand Pokemon at all, but he loved it. And because I shared with him my interest, he was excited, and it was a great moment. Ethan on the far right's showing me how he loves to edit videos. And so he'll spend an evening sharing his philosophy on film, and it's really quite fun. So family night doesn't need to cost money. It just needs a little time. And most importantly, it needs our attention. I promise you, if you try that, it will make a profound difference in the quality of your children's lives. Idea number 2 is attention. This is a short one. When we share our time, we tell our kids we love them. Yet when we give our attention, we show them. It wasn't recently, it was in March, when Wyatt sent me a text message. I just happened to be working home that day in my home office, and he says, the text message says, "Dad, come, I want to show you my world." Boy, if that isn't a metaphor for what children want us to do anyway. So I went down to the basement, and I see him sitting on the couch, and he's building this amazing Minecraft world. You can't really see it here. But it was great, and he wanted to show me this home and this creativity. Minecraft, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what Minecraft is, right? It's like digital Legos, but better. And he was so excited to show me his creation. And it only took a few minutes of my time and attention, and he felt validated and loved. So I learned this once in a leadership course, that the gentleman speaking had said, when you're out shaking people's hands, and let's suppose you're in a line or shaking a lot of people's hands, don't shake one person's hand and look at the next person. When you're with that person, shake their hand and give them all of you, even if it's just for a second or two. There's just a profound difference there. And sometimes we can do that with our kids, where we're there, but we're kind of over here, right? And so giving your attention to your child, even in brief moments, matters. And one of the greatest culprits, one of the greatest blessings and curses in the world today is technology. Right? It gets in the way. It interrupts our discussion. I can be with my kid. This is a fun exercise. Go to a restaurant and just watch how many people are there. Sometimes I wonder if husbands and wives are just texting each other across the table. It's a true story. My teenage son, him and his friends will sit down on that couch, and they're just all texting. It's just the new world of socialization, I guess. If ever there was a funny family photo, it's this. I want to meet this family in the worst way. I think they have the funniest sense of humor. And so lesson learned, right? Okay, so the third idea is conversation. Now this is important, right? This is the one thing we can do as long as we're around, is we can talk and we can share ideas. What I've discovered is that if we as parents can go into our children's room, right? This is their castle, their domain, okay? Go in their room, that's their special place. Get on their level, ask sincere questions, go beneath the surface, be real. And when we do that, significant things begin to happen in the relationship, both with our child. And I remember as a kid how neat it was when my mom visited my room, or my dad. It felt like royalty was coming in. Like, wow. The only time she would come in otherwise was to tell me to clean it. But the way we talk to our children often becomes their inner voice. And so when we spend that time one-on-one with our children, we can encourage them. We can tell them, I love you. I love it when you do this. I admire this about you. And that does so much for our children. If you want to care for your children, I think this is a special opportunity and key to doing just that. Idea number 4, adventure. Now there's a definition, lots of definitions about risk and all of that, and danger. I'm not talking about that kind of adventure. To me, the definition to adventure is to do something outside your comfort zone, or to seek after new experiences, or to explore the unknown and unfamiliar. And as a family, we employ that. We do a thing called park hopping, and this is where we would pack a picnic kind of lunch thing, and on Mondays we'd just take off to some park we'd never been at. And there's tons of parks in my area. And it has been so much fun. When Wyatt was young, he would bring a little tool case with him, and in it he had a bottle of Febreze. So when Natalie would lay out the blanket on the grass, he was spraying the Febreze all over the blanket. It was just cute. But park hopping was fun. Whether that's interesting or not, or just seeing special sights, it's good to get out. As we began to get out, we began hiking and exploring the outdoors, or just taking long drives in places we'd never been. And we discovered things about Utah in my backyard that we'd never seen before. I didn't know we had rams, and I guess we have bears too. And do new things, silly things, fun things. Just get out and have adventures. And again, you'll be surprised at things you'll see if you just take a moment to look. One of our favorite photos on an adventure to go to a park was to see a guy with his dog, and that was one of the coolest Instagram photos I've ever taken. I love this that guy. Okay, this is one of my favorite ideas, and I hope that you'll try this. This is really fun. Whether you're, it's about imagination and storytelling. And I think the art of storytelling has been lost in so many ways in this generation. So here's what I do. It's storytelling with music. And here's how it works. You make a playlist. And the playlist is not like rock music where there's words, but soundtracks, musical scores to movies. And you make a playlist of various genres. And then what you want to do is randomize the songs. You might have an intense, kind of scary song and a funny song and all kinds of songs, right? And then you take turns telling stories based on the way the music's making you feel. And so there's no script or narrative. You just tell what's going on in your mind. Keep the pace brisk. As soon as somebody taps out, the next person, you change the song, and it's their turn to start tell a story. So, you know, what's fun about this, I even do this with my employees. If I happen to drive with them anywhere, they're like, oh, great, we're going to play this game again. And it's fun even for adults, so give it a shot. But what ends up happening if you're driving to a clinical trial or to the hospital or anywhere that takes any length of time, you'll find that a 30-minute drive or a 4-minute drive feels like 5 minutes. And it feels like you've watched 100 movies in your mind. It's really quite fun. If you'd like, you can go to mitchellsjourney.org/storytelling, and I have a whole list of songs there that you can look at. And you can just begin to kind of get ideas about the music that you might include in a playlist that you'd want to try. I did this at bedtime. This is where I kind of came up with the ideas. I'd put a little speaker with music, and I'd start playing it, and I'd tell them stories to go to bed. Now, fair warning, they don't get sleepy. Like, they get all excited, and they're like, I want to be that guy, or, you know. And what was interesting is I would try to do that storytelling. It was as though I unzipped the ceiling, and all of a sudden the walls fell down, and we were inside of a cave, or we were inside of a magic forest, and you can't see it very well there. But the idea is storytelling is such a powerful method to keep the mind alive and active and create some really fun memories. And some of our sweetest memories are on drives as a family. And remember that funny story Laura Ashley told, or Mitch or anyone else. If you're nervous about trying that, turn the mic over to your kids. Children are natural creators. If you don't believe me, take a look at Minecraft and Lego. Billion-dollar empires built on the notion that children want to create. Last topic number 6, are micro moments. I heard this phrase once and I loved it, that nothing has meaning except the meaning we give it. We give things meaning. And so with little tiny moments that might be otherwise overlooked or glossed over, we can make those moments matter and have meaning to them. So how do you turn ordinary moments into extraordinary ones? I'll just give you a few quick ideas about how we try to do it at our house. Number 1, one time I passed Natalie and Wyatt on the way to, I think, piano practice or something, and I pulled over on my way home from work, and Wyatt was so excited to show me his stuffed animal that he just got. Just a few seconds. Oh, what a cool bear or penguin. And it was just a moment, a micro moment, that mattered. I wasn't too busy to give him my time and attention. Spending time with our kids just to encourage them as my son was learning to drive for the first time. Or again, obvious things like helping our children ride bikes or do things they haven't done before. I remember we were finishing our basement a few years ago, just before Mitchell got sick, and Wyatt wanted to take the box that had the bathtub in it. And he says, "Can I make a fort?" And Natalie's like, "Sure." So for 3 months, Wyatt had a castle on the top of his bunk, and he slept inside of a cardboard box. You know, it's funny, Mitchell slept on the living room floor for a month in a box he had, because we built out 2 bathrooms. And it was funny because that was actually 2 months that Mitchell was on the floor in a box, and his was perfectly cut out. He put it against the wall, he cut out a hole for the plugs so he could charge his iPod and all that. He was really cute. Wyatt, actually it was only a few weeks, his started looking like origami, because he'd like break it apart and cut things open, and pretty soon it was decimated. But you know, allowing our kids to have those little tiny moments that matter to them, to build forts and not be so quick to put them away. Simple things like opening the sunroof and letting our kids throw pinwheels out the window to see how fast they can go. Tiny things, micro moments that mattered. Spending time helping our children perform works of art. I remember going in my backyard and I saw a cardboard box out just off our patio. And I could have gone, "Oh, who left this mess? You know, who's gross, you know, throwing garbage around?" But I looked at it and I started to see breadcrumbs. And what I saw was a stencil had written out of little swords and such. And I asked what it was, and Mitchell said, "Dad, I made a sword." And so rather than getting upset that something was out of order, I took a moment to take a look at what was really going on. And that was a micro moment that mattered. Here's just a very short clip of, we have another tradition in our family where we'll take the time to share what we love about each other. And this was what happened just a few months before Mitch got sick.
Okay, Wyatt's got something about Mitchell.
Oh, I do.
He always is very nice.
Oh,
Yeah, they're here.
My favorite, I think, is watching Mitch get in the water.
You know, we went around the room and we shared what we love about each other, or about Mitch on that day. And Mitch lived off those comments and those positive affirmations for some time. It did so much to his heart and soul. So whether we do that at the dinner table, or we just pull apart our child aside in the hallway or in the backyard and say, "You know what I love about you? It's this." When we make moments matter, when we make people matter, okay? When people matter, moments matter. And so I guess that's the message I want to share with you, is if we can slow down. I heard a gentleman last night in the newly diagnosed session make a brilliant comment about, especially when we're trying to solve the medical problem, we become Google doctors and we're looking up information and we get lost in a flurry of science and we forget about the souls that are living under our roof. So I hope that we can take a moment to make our children matter on a regular basis. There, in my opinion, are no ordinary moments. And I love this. Ask yourself this question: will whatever it is that I'm doing matter a year from now? And if it's distracting us or pulling us away from things that matter more, perhaps we should take a closer look at some of the things we're spending our time and attention on. Mitchell taught me to look closely at the little treasures of life. Natalie taught me how to make hard moments beautiful. There's this beautiful story behind this, but there isn't time to share. Just remember deeply, realize deeply that the present moment is all you really ever have. And so make the most of that. And I want to conclude with the sage advice from my son Mitchell when he said, "Be nice to each other and be glad you're alive. Nothing else matters." I wish you all the very best. I will be behind you, beside you all the way, and supporting your family and encouraging you. And I have tremendous love and admiration for you. And may your journeys be blessed. Thank you for your time.